That was my first round game. That game lasted 6 hours, and it was the last game in the entire tournament hall of like 100+ games. Round 2, I was playing Ryan Ackerman. He's been a chess coach for 10+ years. He took a half-point bye in round 1. He was basically the complete opposite of me. I was totally exhausted. I played a really rough round 1 game, and he was coming in totally fresh. He just showed up because he skipped round 1. Okay, d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, b6, the queen's Indian defense. My opponent played knight c3, bishop b4, bishop g5. This was all theory. h6, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6, and e4. Here I played c5, which is not the standard move, but it is a playable move because I want to play all of these moves eventually. So most people start with bishop b7 in the queen's Indian defense, but I decided to start with c5. Rook c1, I was very happy with this. I was expecting him to push e5 or d5 or do something with the center. So I was very happy that he allowed me to take because now I can play knight c6. Now this is like a very good French Sicilian where black has great development. I was very happy with this until my opponent put out this next sequence of moves, which was knight takes c6. And I was not expecting my opponent to do this. I thought, okay, if you do this, then I can just play d takes c6. My pawn restricts your knight. And I thought this was very good for black. And my opponent played the next move, queen a4. And I'm like, oh, frick, dude. Oh, this is balls. Because it's a fork. So I have to take, which I don't really want to do. After I defend, he can push c4, and my bishop is a dead piece. My queenside pawn structure is just very bad. So I did not like this at all. However, I'm very humbled by the fact that queen a4 is actually a huge blunder. The winning move, I humorously considered this move. I thought it was so ridiculous that it was not even worth considering. But I had seen the idea once before. There's an idea in the Two Knights French main line with a double rook sacrifice. And I was looking at the move queen f4. And I looked at this move for like 2 seconds. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way that this is good. But it is. In fact, it's mate in 13 for black. I should have considered it longer. I could not fathom giving up both of the rooks. But really, you win back the knight no matter what. So you're really only down the exchange. And white's king safety is so bad. I did not see this queen f4 move. This was a missed win. That would have been, after queen f4, queen c2, this position is -2 according to the engine after bishop c5, which I probably would not have played bishop c5. I probably would have castled. It's very frustrating to see this type of move, in my opinion. I think it is very hard to actually play this over the board because the thing is, if it doesn't work, you're done. You lost the game if it doesn't work. So you have to really make sure that it works. I played bishop takes c3, rook takes c3, and bishop b7, right? I didn't want to play bishop d7 because he may be able to pressure this bishop and it might be hard for me to castle. I figured bishop b7 is probably better in every way. So I played bishop b7. He played c5. I cannot play b5 here because he can just take that. So I didn't. He did play c5 though, and I knew he was going to play this move. And I was very frustrated at this because what do I do with this bishop for the rest of the game? I don't know. So at this point I was thinking I have to advance these pawns because I want to play bishop a6. I want to play like a5, bishop a6 to exchange the bishops since this is my worst piece. But I can't do that because I hang b6. So I have to also play b5, but then I block the diagonal. So I also have to play b4, but then the pawn is loose on b4. So I have to play b4, a5, b4, bishop a6 to exchange the bishop. Even then, the c6 is kind of still a weak spot. So I didn't even really like that too much, but I didn't see anything better. It was very frustrating. Like I said, I was very exhausted going into this game. That may have played a role into sort of this messed up opening, but I don't know. Here I castled. My opponent played queen c2. I played b5. I continued with my plan. b5, bishop e2, a5. My opponent castled. One of the reasons I played e5 was because I didn't want my opponent to play e5, and then they deflect my queen to the e5 square. They get a lot of pressure on this diagonal. The idea is you get your rook to d6. Really, once this pawn structure has been established, white's plan is to get their rook to d6 because this is a hole in my position and there's a very big weakness on c6. The rook in the hole can attack my huge weakness. They definitely want to get a piece there. So I played e5. This is for two reasons. First, to stop this diagonal from opening up, And second, because I don't want to go for this. C6 kind of becomes a little bit tender, and A5 does as well. So I sort of changed plans here. I said, okay, I can leave this flexible and I can reroute my bishop, get it activated along the C8, H3 diagonal. That was the dual purpose behind E5. My opponent played A3, and I said, okay, I'll play A4 just to keep these pawns like this. C5 might be a weakness I can attack later, right? Because now the C5 pawn, it can't be defended with another pawn. If he ever goes here, I en passant, and his pawns are isolated. So I was very happy to get this pawn structure, right? I'm still not happy that my pawns are blocking my bishop, but it was a small victory. My opponent played rook d1, I played rook a d8, rook c d3, and I have to play rook d4 to stop his rook from getting to d6. He takes, I take. My opponent played queen d2. I played rook d8, defending my pawn again, and my opponent played f4. So I was very surprised at this move because my opponent is exposing his king for seemingly, I mean, what's the idea here, right? The queens are still on the board. There's a very high possibility we go into a queen endgame or a queen bishop endgame. And in queen endgames, king safety is the most important thing. So to be exposing your king like this, you're just exposing yourself to repetitions in potential future queen endgames. I thought this was a strange move, and I think the engine agrees on that, but I didn't play a good response. I played bishop c8, just trying to reroute this bishop. I should have played queen e7, pressuring these two weak spots, and my opponent has to play queen c7 to defend. And now what does my opponent do? I can play f6. I'm clamping down. I might even be better here. I can reroute my bishop to this diagonal. My bishop can actually be a good defender, a good piece. I've got this passed pawn. Black may even be better here. He wants e5, which is why we play f6. I briefly considered queen e7. I thought white just plays queen c7 and I haven't gained anything, but that's incorrect because I have gained something because right now white is starting to play queen a5. And so queen e7 to force queen c2 prevents white from going queen a5. So I certainly should have done this, but that was a misevaluation by me, which led to the mistake of bishop c8. My opponent played bishop f3, so he wants to play e5 with the discovery. Here, I can actually play bishop e6. On e5, I can play queen e7, and if he takes, then I can take. I missed this counterattack. Again, I think a pretty basic tactical sequence that I feel like I should have seen. I played queen g3. The idea being that I want to play bishop g4 and trade my bad bishop off. My opponent played queen a4. I played rook e8 because I don't have a way to defend everything. And my opponent took my pawn. I can't defend everything here. So I'm going to lose a pawn. I played bishop g4. Did I have something better here? Let me double check. No, bishop g4 was the best. But I'm already losing. This is already +1. Bishop g4. And I was expecting rook d6. Rook d6 or bishop takes g4. But my opponent played rook d8. Which, okay, it's sensible, right? You're just going for trades. Here, I did not like rook takes, queen takes, king here, bishop takes, queen d6. Because I'm still down a pawn here, and I thought it would be very hard for me to defend c6. The problem is, he's not actually threatening to take on c6 because I get a repetition. Remember we were talking about earlier with this f4 move, exposing the king? Remember the queen endgame repetition? Well, this is a possible line where I could have taken advantage of the repetition. The weakened king safety. So like I said, in queen endgames, king safety is the most important thing. I missed this as well, and I figured there was no chance of me winning or even drawing that. So I figured I'd make things complicated, and I played bishop takes f3. So I give up my rook for his bishop, but now he has to be very careful that he doesn't get checkmated after bishop takes e4 and queen d8. He's threatening checkmate, so I have to play queen f5. Any other move with the queen and I lose my bishop. And if I don't move my queen, then I get checkmated. So queen f5 is the only move. My opponent played rook h8 check. I played king g6, and my opponent played queen d6 check, played f6 and queen e7. And here, black has a draw. I was deciding between queen d5 and bishop d5 because I had to play one of them. Otherwise, I'm not quick enough. White is threatening checkmate, so I have to stop the checkmate. So it's one of these moves, and I chose the wrong one. Bishop d5 is a draw because after queen e8, bishop f7 is the only move. Queen takes c6. You just get infinite amounts of checks. After queen takes b2 check, there's queen e2. White gets stuck in a repetition of their own. And so I would have had a draw here if I had seen this. Bishop d5 is the only drawing move. But I played queen d5, and this loses to queen e8. Queen e8, king f5, queen c8, I went back. He eventually gets to force the queen trade here. I did my best to avoid the checks, but there was nothing I could do. And he eventually got the queen trade. If I go here, then simply here. He took this pawn. There's not much I can do here. I mean, right here, I would just love to play this, and I like it feels like I'm almost holding, and my king is much more active. I could make this hard for him. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do here. If I move the king back to move the pawn up, then my king never does anything. He just gets his king into the game. He promotes one of his pawns, so I have to sacrifice this pawn. I tried to go for the b pawn to make a queen, but my opponent did a good job of stopping me with that. And after not too many more moves, my opponent, he can now sack his rook, get into the winning king and pawn endgame. I had one last trick with king d3. If h3, I think I am drawing here. This might be a draw. It's still better for white. But I've got, you know, some chances. One last trick with king e3, but my opponent simply played king f1. And in this position, I resigned. So, like I said, I'm not super proud of my performance today. I had missed wins in both of my games. And in my first game, I drew by repetition when I was winning. So definitely not a performance that I am proud of. But we'll bring them back tomorrow. We'll get some wins. We'll get them next time.